What if China invaded Russia? Firstly, just to be clear, it is very obvious that China would not do this. It would be a terrible decision. It would be disastrous. No one is suggesting this is going to happen, we're just here to ask ourselves, what if? So let's do that. If China attempted to forcefully take over Russia, the results would lead to damage politically, economically, and there would also be military consequences as well. Right now, China doesn't have a ton of close alliances and friendships, but you know who is their closest and most powerful ally? Russia. Russia is actually China's only large and powerful ally. This means that for China, who is trying to assert themselves and show that they are a world superpower, you don't want to ruin a relationship like that. Those are the things you need to be a global superpower, and they simply cannot damage that. So, of course, in the event of China invading Russia, that entire relationship would be ruined, and China would certainly be in a worse place in terms of global politics because of it. An invasion of Russia by China would also truly cause damage to the reputation of the country, again in terms of global politics, because no country would exactly be jumping on a chance to partner up with you when you just turned against your closest ally. It's just not a good look when you're trying to build trust and confidence. This means that an invasion could jeopardize many of the current ongoing foreign policy initiatives. This includes the Belt and Road Initiative, formerly known as One Belt, One Road. If unfamiliar, this is a global infrastructure development strategy that was adopted by the Chinese government in 2013. The goal is basically to invest in almost 70 different countries in international organizations, which of course would then cause China to assume greater leadership roles when it comes to global affairs. As China rises and comes into greater power and status, they want to have these sorts of foreign policies to match. But if China were to turn on their ally and invade Russia, why would any other country trust them to be involved in this sort of infrastructure development? China would then be seen as invaders, and the $10 trillion project would fall by the wayside, and it would have all been a waste. Instead of focusing on these initiatives, everyone, especially those directly around the country, would begin arming themselves and preparing, because if they went ahead and did that, then who would know who would be next? Without the relationship of Russia, China becomes an easier target for any opposition. Russia is of great benefit to China. The two countries certainly have a mutually beneficial relationship, which is exactly why it would be foolish for China to squander that. If China invades Russia, they become a lot more susceptible to any kind of attack, whether it be from NATO or otherwise. An invasion truly wouldn't do them any kind of favors politically. When it comes to what an invasion would do economically, things really don't get any better. Presumably, the only reason I can think of why China would ever invade Russia is to have access to and secure the natural resources that exist there. But here's the flaw with this. They already have access to them. They just have to buy them from Russia, and Russia would love to just ship them right over the border from Siberia. It would make absolutely zero sense for China to instead begin a much more costly war with Russia and perhaps the rest of the world, instead of just paying for the resources they want access to. Like, seriously, think about it. There would be the initial cost of the invasion, then the cost of keeping the war going, then if they were somehow able to drive the Russians out, then there would be the cost of rebuilding all of the destroyed energy and transportation infrastructure that was just ruined, and then the cost of settling people there, and then they would end up just buying those resources again from the new settlers, when in the beginning, they can just purchase them from Russia and call it a day. Also, China is already getting gas from Russia via the Siberia pipeline. This little deal began in 2019, and in 2021 alone, Russia exported 16.5 billion cubic meters of gas to China, so clearly there's no issue doing business together. It really just wouldn't make any sense, but one thing is certainly clear. An invasion would cause a lot of trouble economically, which is just another thing that would get in the way of China and its path to becoming a global superpower. We talked about the effects that an invasion would have politically and economically, but what about in a military sense? The Russian military is likely to put up quite a fight if it were to ever come to that. Firstly, there's a lot of weaponry that is delivered to China from Russia. If their weapons are Russian-made, this means that Russia knows all of the details of them. This includes range, accuracy, tactics that can be utilized. It would be like having the other team's playbook. Couple this with the fact of the really advanced weaponry that Russia has that really nowhere else in the world is equal to, and you really have a recipe for disaster. I mean, it has been clear since the Cold War that Russia is technologically advanced and that they know what they're doing. It might not be the flashiest, but they have their best and brightest working on these sorts of things. Another way that China would likely suffer in the military way is that Russia would be fighting on their very large home soil. China would need time to build up their forces if they were to choose to invade, but Russia would already know this. Whether it's through informants, spying, or satellites, a surprise attack would be highly unlikely. This means that Russia would be able to prepare effectively. Russia has a far better understanding of the seasons and the terrain, and while China is highly populated, Russia is vast. China isn't small by any means, but sitting at third on the list of largest countries still puts them close to just half the size of Russia. This alone would mean that many more people and resources would be needed for an invasion to be feasible if they wanted even a fighting chance at winning. This means more money, more people, and in the end, likely more deaths. Any attempt by China to take Russia or even just Siberia would likely be catastrophic for Chinese forces. This extra preparation time would also allow Russia ample time to do things like placing traps or setting up defensive positions or planning ambushes. People would certainly argue that the amount of manpower that China has might place them on top of Russia, but that isn't necessarily true. While it does give them a bit of an upper hand, it might not be the slam dunk that some would claim it is. In this scenario, Russia doesn't need to completely wipe out the Chinese armed forces. That isn't the goal. Instead, all they need to do is either push the forces out or make it so costly that it's not worth their while. Russian troops are also likely to be more mentally prepared for war. This is because of more recent conflict and tensions, and they also have more military experience than China, and this just comes down to history. While most of this video has been talking about all of the ways China would likely lose if they were to choose to invade Russia, I think it's important to note that many people, if it came down to this scenario, would also be doubting China. I think we would underestimate their ability to adapt, their ability to create infrastructure with speed and efficiency, and it would be ridiculous for me to skip over just how technologically advanced China is. I said it about Russia, but the same is true for China as well. China has very advanced military aviation and satellite communications, which would become essential during this war. I don't think it's enough for them to claim the win, but a good fight would definitely be put up. There's also the argument of how long and withstanding Chinese civilization is as a whole. I mean, Chinese civilization has been around for thousands of years, and to do something like that, you have to be doing something right. China wouldn't just invade Russia. China is here for the long game, and that doesn't include rash decisions with little thought and a more than likely terrible outcome. If China were to invade Russia, it's likely that they would be doing it because they know something that we don't. To end off this list, we of course have to talk about the inevitable: nuclear arms. Russia is armed to the teeth with ready-to-launch nukes. This strengthens them, but it also plays into the minds of anyone who is thinking about crossing them. Are you ready for that kind of fire? Having that kind of thing at your disposal would more than definitely be used by the Russian government to help push the forces out. This is all to say that I think a win on China's side, should this scenario ever come true, would be highly unlikely. Russia would have to make a series of really terrible mistakes or have some really poor leadership in order to see that kind of outcome, but truthfully, in all likelihood, this is not a situation we will see come to fruition anytime soon. Alright guys, that has been our video for today. Thank you so much for checking it out. Stay curious, LBQ fam, and I'll see you next time. Bye!